Gen Z has been driving changes in many aspects of our lives, from the way we shop and communicate to the way we think of relationships, as well as how we go about work and plan for the future. I'm Anelise Borges, and on this episode of The Stream, we're asking if retirement is a thing of the past.
So I opted out my workplace pension last year, and I'm going to tell you why.
You cannot and you should not rely on state benefits for retirement.
Hey, young people, I want to let y'all know right now, we're raising the retirement age from 65 to 70. So now you got to work from now until you're 70 to afford a basic living.
People think that living in a retirement home is boring.
Hit it, hit it, hit it, hit it, get it, get it.
Save more money for retirement. Retirement's the best part of the deal.
How much do you make per year?
Probably somewhere around 80, 90,000.
What if you're already in your 40s and you haven't really started saving for retirement yet? What should you do?
And millions of young workers are answering that question by opting out of traditional retirement plans. They say the system isn't aligned with the realities of today. Gen Z workers say that instead of climbing the corporate ladder, they prefer prioritizing their mental health by traveling and having time for their hobbies and loved ones, and that the rising cost of living and job insecurity are some of the reasons for not saving up for their golden years. What does that mean for their future? Joining me to discuss are Teresa Ghilarducci, a professor of economics at the New School. She's joining us today from New York, and Julie Rose, a digital nomad and travel coach, who's joining us from Wellington, New Zealand. Thank you both so much for your time. I would like to start with this idea that millennials and Gen Z say they don't want to wait until they're 65 to enjoy life. So they've been taking these breaks from the workforce that can last anywhere between 3 months to an entire year. They call it micro or mini retirement.
Gen Z are embracing a new trend called micro-retiring that's got people taking extended breaks from work.
I am microdosing retirement as a 30-year-old.
I'm kind of in this mini micro retirement right now.
The rise of the trend comes at a time when Gen Xers and baby boomers are having to either extend or come out of retirement. And it's got Gen Z and millennials looking on with horror.
I'm not the only person terrified of going to an office every single day, 2 weeks vacation a year, and then retiring at 65.
Now, people everywhere are saying hell no to waiting until your golden years for retirement, and instead are opting for regular career breaks and sabbaticals. And can you really blame them? Personally, I'm a big fan of the concept, and with Gen Z being the most stressed generation, it makes complete sense that they're all in on this.
Julie, you have embarked on a mini retirement. Can you share your story with us?
Sure. Yes, I did. About almost 4 years ago, I quit my real corporate job and decided that I was going to do what I wanted to do on my own schedule, how I wanted to do it and where I wanted to do it with the people that I wanted to be with. I had found over 14 years, I had lost basically part of my identity. I had all my attention was going towards my employer. And I was kind of lost in the trappings of consumerism and commercialism. And I kind of woke up one day and decided this is just not how I want to live. So I decided to cut the golden handcuffs and escape the workforce. And it has been so rewarding and fulfilled me so much along the way that I really encourage everybody should give it a try to really rediscover themselves and get back to our roots, because a lot of us are just so ingrained in the Western messaging that we've been receiving time and time again, year after year, and there's a lot more to life.
And you've basically reinvented yourself from that experience, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that. But Teresa, we keep hearing about this desire to focus on work-life balance. It seems to be a very important notion for young workers today. How is this shaping Gen Z's financial goals?
Work-life balance is absolutely not new. It doesn't belong to Gen Z. It was a problem of all workers whose employers want them to work all the time, and where workers want basically a song in the 1900s, bread and roses. They want to be able to be with their families and be at home. This idea of micro retirement or taking steps back from the labor market has pros and cons. And most people who have taken breaks like this have a lot of regrets when they get older. So the pros are that you're not selling yourself, to your employer. And I heard implicit in what Julie said is that if you're prepared to do that, to take hours, days, and time off from working for someone else, you need to reduce your consumption standards. You really need to consume a lot less and have a different relationship with commodities and with services. And that's the right strategy, knock it down. But the regret part is what I'm concerned about. When you're taking a break from work, you are taking a break from saving for your retirement. Now, a 40-year-old might tell me, I'll never retire. But I stand before you today as a researcher over 40 years, following people from the time they started work until they died. And what I know is the stark reality is that you may want to work in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, having taken your time off over your life course, but the employers won't want you at 50, 60, and 70.
You said work-life balance is not new. It doesn't belong to Gen Z. You're absolutely right. What I was trying to say is that it seems as though Gen Z is really focused on that, and they're claiming it. They want it, and they're putting their foot down and telling employers, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to sell my soul, and I'm not going to sell my time. Technology and the pandemic normalized these different reality where people were no longer needed in the office. Today, many aspire to ditch this regular 9-to-5 lifestyle and become what Teresa just mentioned, digital nomads. But what does that actually mean? Take a look.
Basically, a digital nomad is someone who earns a living online while living in different locations around the world. It's someone who's working remotely while traveling and exploring new countries and cities around the world. They're still working very hard to make a living, but they really value their freedom. It's someone who wants to experience new cultures and live a life outside the norm. Digital nomads tend to stay in a place for a few months at a time. This is called slow traveling, and it's a great way to fully experience a place. You're also less likely to burn out this way from traveling because you can settle in and really get to know a place well and experience as much as you can in that place. It's also a great way to make friends, especially if you're staying in a co-living, because then you'll meet other digital nomads. Becoming a digital nomad is for people who want to live an adventurous life. They want to see the world and they want to make money while doing it.
Teresa, again, nomadic workers are also not new, right? But this lifestyle has become an objective for many people among Gen Z. Talk to us a little bit about the regrets. Talk to us a little bit about the dangers of that choice.
Yeah, it does sound great, and it sounds like a person who isn't worried about health insurance and isn't worried about being in a country's social insurance program. So I don't. If you're going to be a digital nomad, you really need to know whether or not you're contributing to the pension plan of the country that you might settle in. You have to look ahead. So the regrets are you've traveled the world, but you haven't accumulated any service credits in a pension system or a healthcare system. Let me take the United States. If you live outside of the United States and don't contribute to the Social Security system, and you may be contributing to the country where you happen to land for 3 months, your tax records and paperwork is going to be pretty complicated. If you're lucky, you're in a country that has an agreement with the United States, and the amount of credits that you earn in, let's say, Italy will eventually wind up into your American Social Security account. But in all this discussion about digital nomads, I never hear about health insurance or pension coverage or disability insurance. And you regret that when you need it.
Perhaps because they're young and they don't necessarily need or worry about health insurance that much. What about the question that everybody keeps talking about, that these pension systems are no longer sustainable, that they're not going to be able to pay for anything reasonable for you to live with by the time you reach the retirement age anyway?
That's not an economic question. Every single pension system has an actuarial basis, and if enough money is going in, it will be sustainable. That kind of comment is usually political, and it comes from conservative governments who don't want to support the living standards of ordinary workers. And so they dress it up in math, but the math is doable. It's just the political will that's not. But I can understand your question. If a young person doesn't have any faith in any government program, then being nomadic might make sense. The regrets come when you are disabled, temporarily disabled, need health insurance, and when you get what's called superannuated, when you get to an age where, despite the fact that you want to work, your skills, effort, your responsibilities just aren't that valuable to any employer.
Julie, are you getting worried about everything that Teresa is saying here? Have these things crossed your mind? And how are you experiencing and navigating this system that you chose?
I'm not worried. I think I diversified my income streams over my 14 years in the workforce. I'm not young by, Gen Z standards. I'm an elder millennial, as they say. So I spent a lot of time in the workforce already contributing to my government Social Security plan, as well as my own personal investment funds. I lived beneath my means. I made those choices that Teresa was mentioning, adjusting your own spending so that you can make a goal for the future. That's the decision I made. I think a lot of people maybe are not thinking ahead in that way, but I made sure to run the numbers so that it could work for me. Side hustling, I explored making rental income when I had a house, partnerships, different initiatives that I'm on. And of course, the biggest impact to your overall budget and your overall spending is location independence and location flexibility. So live in a lower cost of living country, your expenses are reduced. And people say, oh my gosh, travel is so expensive. It costs so much to travel. No, I'm an American. Living in the US is much more expensive than living nomadically for me. I spend about half of what I spent living in the US traditionally as a normal homeowner, single household. So I think, if you plan, if you prepare, if you're smart about it, you are not robbing your future to pay your present. There is a little balance that needs to be incorporated, and it just involves a little bit of planning and a little bit of work and a little bit of thinking ahead and some radical choices that have radical results.
Among the things that you were saying there,
I think it's... Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Teresa, because I was just going to say, Teresa has been nodding throughout your entire answer, so I'm going to give her the floor.
Julie, you've done the right things. You've figured out what your standard of living has to be, how much, your budget. And you said you did a little thinking ahead. I bet people will have to do a lot of thinking ahead. So here's your benchmark. No matter how you get it, at 35, you should have twice the amount you're living on in your retirement account. That's the money that you won't touch until you're superannuated, until you're 65. At 45, you should have 4 times what you want to live on. At 55, 7 times. At 65, 10 times. So I would ask every digital nomad or people who are taking micro retirements if they're on track to have those multiples in their retirement account. So you earn $100,000, you should have $400,000 in your retirement account at 45, et cetera. That's two times at 35, 4 times at 45, 7 times at 55, and 10 times at 55, 10 times at 65.
Those are fascinating numbers, but I want to bring in another aspect to the conversation, Teresa, because one of the reasons why young people keep saying they aren't saving for retirement today is because they can't afford it. Take a look.
So in order for you to retire comfortably, you need to start putting money away now, okay? Because invested money compounds over time, so it is critical to begin when you're young. So here's the slight issue. I can barely afford my bills now. So it's hard for me to put away money for 70-year-old me when I can't put away money for now me. Do you get it? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Have you considered living with 6 roommates? I already do. Yes. Got it. Okay. How about, have you thought about moving back in with mom and dad for a little bit? I'm 36 years old. All right? But let's just pretend hypothetically that I did have disposable income. How much money would I need to start contributing? That's a great question. So if you start contributing $400 to $500 a month now, it could easily be $1 to $2 million by the time you're 65. Okay, and with the cost of living increasing at the rate that it is, how much money am I going to need to comfortably retire at 65? Let me just do the math real quick on that. Okay, roughly $137 million. So do you see the gap there? Yeah, that is a pretty sizable gap. Okay, well, here's another option. Have you considered starting a pyramid scheme?
Teresa, there's this report done by the U.S. company Credit Karma. 31% of American Gen Z live at home with a parent or a family member because they can't afford rent today. Before the show, we had a conversation where you said that actually the market has been kind to this generation because they have the luxury to actually take these breaks. Can you explain what that means? Because when we think about a market being kind to a generation, we don't think about this generation not even being able to save or pay rent for that matter.
Yeah, cost of living is kind of high all the time, especially relative to your income. And but Gen Z has had it better than most generations. The unemployment rate has been super low, as a technical term. It's been about 4% for longer than I would have ever imagined as an economist for 42 years. It's been about 4%. That means workers have a lot of power, that they can leave work confident they could find another job if they needed to. Also, wages have gone up a little bit for this generation. It's very different than boomers or even millennials, which they saw every year their wages hardly kept up with inflation. So relatively, the market has been good for these workers. I'm not telling you that the market's good for workers. Capital and employers have a lot of power, but relatively, when I hear people, younger people say, I'm just going to go on and off, quit a job, get another one, that's a very unusual attitude for workers.
And now a report by Pensions Policy Institute says that 46% of Gen Z believe the state pension will not exist by the time they reach retirement. And because people are living longer, Gen Z believe they will have to delay retiring in full. This means there will be profound long-term economic implications for Gen Z if the current pension system stays the same. Teresa, you mentioned this before, and I wanted you to walk us through what financial tools are most popular among Gen Z for retirement and investment planning. How are they saving, if they're saving at all?
Actually, the first thing Gen Z is doing is reducing their consumption standards. You start your financial planning by looking at your budget. And then you start retirement planning by imagining your future self. So you need to feed yourself and you need to feed your future self. So it really is an attitude shift. And just the math is if you want to feed your future self, you have to do two things. One is to take good care of that government program that is your major financial partner. Whatever country you're in, that state pension system and healthcare system is the main way you're going to keep up with inflation when you're old. It's insurance and it's a monthly check. So take care of that. Pay attention to what politicians are saying about that system and vote for the politician that wants to maintain it and not the politician that says, I don't know, we can't afford it. That's really important. The second thing to do is to save consistently, even if you're not working, because your money will be working even if you're not.
You've given some precious advice throughout the show. Thank you. It's very important. Julie, I want to ask you, where to from here? From what you're seeing around you, from your peers, what do you think is going to happen to the idea of retiring?
Well, you know, the perspective that I actually see a lot, especially among my peers in my age group, a lot of worry about what if I run out of money? What about healthcare? What about housing? How could I possibly do what you're doing? And I have to raise my hand to, well, that's the fear of the unknown. And all those fear-mongering headlines that keep us working well into old age. When I quit my job, I had savings, I had marketable skills. If I ever need to get a real job again, I'm not too worried about the resume gap. I know that that has become much more normalized over the years. Currently, I supplement my income part-time with work and I keep my expenses low. But when I made this life adjustment initially, I heard from friends and peers, often with higher net worths and higher salaries, that oh well, you know, that's great for you, but I'll have to wait till I have more money, or when I have more equity, or when I have more assets. And these people are much more risk averse. Freedom is literally in their grasp, and they'll never spend all of their money in their lifetime anyway. I think we have to also shine a light on that segment of people that are are so bought into this fear of running out or getting injured or something getting sick, that idea that they're not taking advantage of the precious, precious and limited time that we have on this earth, because the future is not guaranteed anyway. And they're deferring enjoyment until some magical retirement age. And what are we here for if that's the case? That's my question.
It's a good question. According to the World Health Organization, by 2030, 1 in 6 people will be aged 60 or over. What will that look like? Well, some have already started challenging the notion that they will be hiding away alone at home. Take a look.
Were you not worried about getting older ever?
Never. I think the population in general is putting more effort into satisfying elderly people in unconventional ways. They're no longer making us old. They're doing all kinds of young things for us to keep us active and thinking and laughing and being productive. This wasn't so a decade ago even.
Julie, would you say that this conversation should include the notion that people are changing and the way we are going to age is also going to be very different?
Yeah, I think if we can consume less, if we can engage more, if we can care more about the wealth of a life that is fulfilling than the wealth of a bank account, the sky is the limit to really our own happiness. And as we're all living longer, we don't want to spend the most of our life in the workforce. And what is the rest of that? What does the rest of our life look like once we're older and maybe we've lost touch with all the things that we enjoy and are curious about and all the places we want to go to, but maybe we're not as fit as we used to be? I think you have to prioritize the things that matter to you as soon as you can in life.
Teresa, one final word from you.
That's one of the best things about our progress as a civilization, is that humans think about meaning and their own personal narrative as they get older. You know, who they are to other people, what they want to give back. That's a standard human development stage. Eric Erickson called it a generative period. It's all about it's all about actualization. A lot of people, I care about the majority of people that don't have higher degrees or saleable skills or can work anywhere they want. I care about people where their labor is only valued if they're actually in a geographical area or in a workplace. I think of all the service workers, home healthcare workers, people who work on the subway. Most of us have to be near our students, you know, or near our customers.
And you're touching on something extremely important here in terms of the protection of workers and also the privilege that indeed people like Julie have to work anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Teresa and Julie, I would like to thank you both so much for being part of this fascinating conversation here on the stream today. And thank you all for tuning in. Do stay in touch with us online. For that, you can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream. Take care, and I'll see you soon.